A republic if you can keep it. September 17th, 1787, the day the Constitution was signed. We're all familiar with Benjamin Franklin's famous line, but he wasn't warning us about government. He wasn't even warning us about the Constitution. He was warning us about us. And just before that, he took things even further in his last major speech at the Philadelphia Convention with a really dire prediction of just where things would end. So on this episode, we're going to explore those warnings so we can understand what keeping it really meant to people like Benjamin Franklin, plus John Dickinson, Samuel Adams, and many others. They all understood that words on paper would never be enough. But first of all, before getting to that, welcome, and thank you for joining me here on the path to liberty. My name is Michael Bolden with the 10th Amendment Center, and this is the show for Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. So picture this. We're going back in time to September 17th, 1787, the final day of the Philadelphia Convention. The Constitution is completed, and Benjamin Franklin provides the first speech of the day calling for people to sign it. Now, the wise old sage, actually asked James Wilson to read his speech, which he had prepared for him, and he didn't offer a 5-star review right out of the gates. In fact, he started out with some real honesty, something that most politicians seem to lack today. He said, "In these sentiments, sir, I agree to this Constitution with all its faults, if they are such." Now, Franklin's objections to the Constitution were no secret to the framers, not at all, especially on things like executive power. He saw a lot of problems there. But for him, it wasn't about gaining perfection. Perfection is impossible, and he was still optimistic about how things would play out, but only in the short term. He said, "There is no form of government but what may be a blessing to the people if well administered. And I believe farther that this is likely to be well administered for a course of years." But that phrase, "for a course of years," it said it all. He knew that things would end in total tyranny no matter what they put on paper in 1787 or who they had in office for the first few years. He said, "And this can only end in despotism, as other forms have done before it, when the people shall become so corrupted as to need despotic government, being incapable of any other." So Franklin understood that every system eventually slides to tyranny, even if you can find good people to administer it for a course of years. Here, Thomas Paine zeroed in on the modern take and ripped apart the idea that merely having the ability to vote for people in government is somehow a real defense against tyranny. It obviously is not, but here's Paine. "It is not because a part of the government is elective that makes it less a despotism. If the persons so elected possess afterwards unlimited powers." So what he's saying is it doesn't matter how many times the people get to choose people to hold power. If their power is not kept in check, you're gonna have total tyranny no matter what. And Paine continued, "Election in this case becomes separated from representation, and the candidates are candidates for despotism." But it didn't just stop at the ballot box. James Madison, the so-called father of the Constitution, he actually applied this same pretty harsh truth to the Constitution itself, even when he was advocating to vote for ratification, right here in the Federalist Papers, number 48. He obviously understood, like so many others in the founding generation, that words on paper don't enforce themselves. They never did, and they never will. Madison put it like this: "A mere demarcation on parchment of the constitutional limits of the several departments is not a sufficient guard against those encroachments which lead to a tyrannical concentration of all the powers of government in the same hands." And John Dickinson, who was, we could call him the father of the Articles of Confederation, he was the lead author of it, he also hammered this same point home. Even the best Constitution cannot guarantee a good government. And maybe good government is an oxymoron, but that's best left for another episode. Here's Dickinson. A good constitution promotes, but not always produces, a good administration. So from there, Dickinson asked the essential question, what are we going to do about it? He said, but notwithstanding, it must be granted that a bad administration may take place. What is then to be done? This is the essential question. If you put together a constitution, rules for government, and government doesn't follow those rules, that's a bad administration. What do you do about it? The answer before getting to it is actually the foundation behind it is a principle that basically all the people of the founding generation understood. Even the big government people understood this as well. John Jay, the future first Chief Justice, put it like this during the ratification debates. He said, the Constitution only serves to point out that part of the people's business which they think proper by it to refer to the management of the persons therein designated. Short version is, the government is merely an agent of the people of the several states. It is not their master. It is the opposite of the British system that they fought a long, bloody war to secede from. So no hesitation on this answer to that question from John Dickinson. The answer to a bad administration, to bad government, isn't within the government at all. He said the answer is instantly found before the supreme sovereignty of the people. In short, it's up to the people themselves to protect and defend their own constitution and their own liberty, whether the government happens to like it or not. And that's how Dickinson really put it, but in much better terms than me. He said it is their duty to watch and their right to take care that the Constitution be preserved. Or in the Roman phrase on perilous occasions, to provide that the Republic receive no damage. Now, Dickinson, Franklin, Paine, Madison, they did not make this stuff up. They didn't invent it at all. This was basically the default setting throughout the American Revolution. And here from James Otis Jr., 20 years earlier in 1767, writing as Freeborn American, one of my favorite ever pseudonyms, he said, it is our duty in the best of times to watch over our Constitution with a jealous eye. Of course, in the worst of times, people tend to pay more attention. He's saying even when things seem to be going great, we have to really be on it and make sure they are not violating the rules, because if they do, someone else is going to come along and violate those rules more and more and more. Precedent is always quite dangerous. Now, I know some people are saying there was no constitution yet. This was under the unwritten British Constitution. And of course, we know that the American Revolution certainly birthed the idea of having written constitutions. Again, another episode. But the key word here, again, is duty. It's not just a good idea. We already heard duty. Their duty to watch from John Dickinson. Duty to keep a jealous eye over the Constitution from James Otis Jr. And here, Samuel Adams, the father of the American Revolution, writing as Candidus in the Boston Gazette. This is the publication, the mouthpiece of the Sons of Liberty, 1771. Again, it's not just a good idea. Duty, the liberties of our country, the freedom of our civil constitution are worth defending at all hazards. And it is our duty to defend them against all attacks. Adams understood that freedom depended on the virtue and good moral character of the people. And if they refused to get the job done, if they refused to defend their constitution and liberty against a presumptuous invader, like a government invading the rights of the people, invading the reserved powers of the people, well, a single word answers that. Pathetic. He said, if therefore a people will not be free, if they have not virtue enough to maintain their liberty against a presumptuous invader, they deserve no pity and are to be treated with contempt and ignominy. I think it's like shame. Just total. You guys are just awful. Pathetic, I think, is a pretty good word for it. Centuries earlier, even Machiavelli understood that tyranny doesn't really depend on the tyrant. It depends on the people themselves. He said it must be assumed as a well-demonstrated truth that a corrupt people that lives under the government of a prince can never become free, even though the prince and his whole line should be extinguished. And you can see these views echoed in Benjamin Franklin's speech that last day of the Philadelphia Convention. When the people become corrupt, they're going to have despotic government because they're capable of none other. And Machiavelli's saying, well, if the people are corrupt, and there's really nothing more morally degenerate and corrupt to the founders and the old revolutionaries than a people who would not stand up for their own constitution and their own liberty. So that's a great type of a massive kind of corruption that we have to really overcome today. But when they're that corrupt, it doesn't matter if you even get rid of all the terrible leaders, the people will still not be free because they have to have, well, the moral strength in order to get the job done. Now, Thomas Paine, he understood the flip side of this whole equation as well. Tyrants aren't powerful because they're strong. They gain power when the people are weak. He said the strength and powers of despotism consist wholly in the fear of resisting it. And Thomas Jefferson, he also understood the real threat. Any people without the moral strength and fortitude, the fortitude and perseverance is how Samuel Adams put it. If they don't have that willingness to stand up to their own government when it invades their rights and liberties, that's like a hidden rot, a cancer that eats them away from the inside out until it destroys the entire system. He said, it is the manners and spirit of a people which preserve a republic in vigor. A degeneracy in these is a canker which soon eats to the heart of its laws and constitution. Now, as we saw right at the beginning, Benjamin Franklin certainly understood the bottom line. Freedom is not a gift from politicians, and it cannot be guaranteed by words on paper. It's a status that has to be earned and kept. Now, just in the weeks before the Philadelphia Convention started, it was literally, let me do my government-run school math is not good, 5 months to the day before that speech, April 17th, 1787, before he said, "End in despotism," he took the exact same position in a letter to the abbeys Chalais and Arnaud. My French is terrible, but this is Benjamin Franklin's words here. Let me add that only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. So the ink was barely dry on the Constitution when the highly influential salonier Elizabeth William Powell in Philadelphia asked Benjamin Franklin that big question. What did you give us? And here we can see up on the screen, or, well, if you're listening, I'll read it off to you, from the diary of James McHenry. A lady asked Dr. Franklin, "Well, doctor, what have we got? A republic or a monarchy?" "A republic," replied the doctor, "if you can keep it." And here's the bottom line, and this should be obvious. The republic was not kept. But it's not the fault of the Constitution, because words on paper don't enforce themselves. They never did, and they never will. But when the people trust their constitutional education to government, when the people surrender their constitutional enforcement to government, it should be no surprise that we end up living under the largest government in the history of the world. The only path forward, the only path to liberty, is for we the people to learn how to protect and defend our own constitution and our own liberty, whether the government happens to like it or not. And that's probably the number one reason why we work so hard every single day to reach and teach more and more people about these essential foundational principles from the founders and the old revolutionaries. Our goal, maybe someday in the future, Constitution Day will be every single day of the year. And nothing helps us do this work more than the financial faith and support of our members. If you got a couple of bucks of that quickly devaluing dirty government fiat, please consider throwing it our way. over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Our membership program starts out at just $2 a month. We also have annual, 5-year, and lifetime options. Again, it's 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. It's all spelled out. If you don't want to become a member but still want to help us out financially, that is super awesome. You can do so with a one-time contribution, or if you already are a member, first of all, thank you so much, and you want to pitch in more, no pressure. I just want to make sure you know how you can do that. You can do a one-time gift over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/donate. We accept more than just the dirty government fiat, goldbacks, sound money, other stuff. You'll see it all there as well. Again, 10thamendmentcenter.com/donate. Of course, there's a bunch of free and easy peasy things you can do to help us spread the word, and it helps out actually quite a bit. Basically, all the stuff that you could do to interact with the mainstream video and audio platforms will help trigger those algorithms and tell them to show us to more people, like watch time percentage on YouTube and video platforms. A 10-minute video, you watch it 10 minutes, is 100%. 400 minutes? I keep pushing these numbers higher. Is 400%. Way more awesome. But also hitting the like button, leaving comments, reviews on Apple Podcasts, any other podcast platform, subscribe, get notifications, all the stuff, sharing links, etc. It all helps out a great deal. I'm very grateful for your support, whether it's financial, otherwise, or a combination of all the above. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it was interesting, maybe a little entertaining here and there. But more important than anything, I hope it made you think, and I hope you learned something. Again, I really appreciate you spending some of your time with me today. I hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing you next time here on the Path to Liberty.